So I'm down here by Navy Pier, Streetersville, and they're building this new building. But what you have to do is get the occupancy rate of all the buildings around. You want to know how vacant they are. If those buildings are strong, meaning they have 90+% occupancy, then building a new building would make sense. If they're above 90 or 100%, that the buildings really don't have any long periods of vacancies, then you know the demand is right. So you can feel how demand is by getting the occupancy rate of the properties around it. Now, if you have a low occupancy rate, sometimes building a new building and bringing in, like this new building, they're bringing in a park and many other things. Well, if it's adding this new park and other amenities into the community that doesn't exist, and it's going to drive people's demand to want to live in this area, then it helps bring up the occupancy rate around them. So you have to understand, you can't price your building, your units, if the occupancy rates of the structures around you are low. You're going to have to drive in through the new building, but that means the building has more upside appreciation. So the initial units are going to start at a much lower rate. And the people that buy, eventually, as the units and area gets in more demand, you have more upside potential. But if it's high occupancy, when they buy into the unit, you're not going to get dramatic increases in property value. And that's fine. They buy in, they get more stable value, and it'll slowly rise, but it's not going to be this dramatic bump. If the occupancy rates of these buildings all around here are high. And if these aren't high, then if I was in all these other buildings, the only reason I would approve that if they were going to drive people into my building. If they were going to drive people into my building, that way my property value in my building goes up. So is there something with this building? You could have an observation deck. So they have to figure out, now they have the movie theater and bowling alley and everything, and this is Streeterville, and this is North Pier, and it's awesome. And truly, it's really nice. When they redid it, the thing in here, this building was built like a tank. This building inside is built like a tank. The wood and all that, unbelievably sturdy building. This building is solid as can be. And the guy that owned it used to live on the upper floor. He actually had the whole thing to himself on the upper floor. So below it was that, and he had the whole real estate. He lived in the building. I don't think he's alive anymore, but he had the whole upper floor as his own private apartment, his own private residence. And then they built this tower on the end. I don't understand why the bus would be coming up on my back end. There's a second lane right there. Buses can change lanes too. Especially I'm going in the slow lane. They're going faster. They should go to the left. Slower traffic to the right. Faster traffic to the left. Turn lanes are to the right here. Slower to the right. So, anyways, if they're doing this and they're structuring it right, They have to figure out, maybe the building does an incentive the developers in the Navy Pier and North Pier. Or maybe they're going to throw into a marketing pack. And the developers are going to help market the other properties. Truly, what is your give from them developing the building? So are they going to throw in certain things, like they're going to throw in this park, they say, and it's an ad feature, and people, it's going to be more desirable to live here. So there's supposed to be this park. But are they going to throw an enhancement to Navy Pier? Or are they going to throw in a special financing fund for other buildings around it to enhance? Yeah, they're going to create a low financing loan package, and the other buildings can borrow from this low financing. So they set aside $5 million or $10 million, and that's nothing in a project like that. So they set a side fund, say, of $10 million, and they give out loans at 4%. And the loans are for refinancing or renovating residential space or commercial space in this area. And then they can get the government of the city of Chicago to throw in a tax deduction given on the state taxes, but state taxes can do local deductions. Oh yeah, the state tax can do a local deduction for Cook County or city of Chicago or for Rockford if you're a resident, and you can write off something, or they can do a refundable credit. Say you live in Rockford and they want to do something to, improve the structures. And so people that live in Rockford will get a $2,000 refundable credit. But you have to live in Rockford, and they have the zip codes in that, and people that are in these zip codes are eligible for this credit. But the credit can only be used to purchase. It's a dedicated credit. It has to go to the work. The money is released to a contractor or to purchase. It's not cash into your pocket. Like the remodeling loan, and I'll show you, they restructure the remodeling loan. You can't use that for your own money. You have to remodel. So the credit says that you have to upgrade the residence. And government can give a list of approved contractors. And you can do it from any of these approved contractors. The government can choose an approved contractor list. People bid to be on the contractor list, and they say, for this credit, you can only use these approved contractors, and the credit will go directly to these contractors. And if you don't do the work, you don't get the credit. So it's a refundable credit that goes directly to the contractor. Just like the loan. It's a $10 million loan, but it's an approved contractor list, and their own company can be one of the contractors. But they have to give at least 3 contractors. They cannot be the only contractor. That's self-dealing. So they have to have several contractors like Walsh Construction, McHugh Construction, and several others that are on the list that you can choose from, and the loan will go to these contractors to do these upgrades. But the loan does not go to you. And the reason for this is they got to guarantee the work's going to get done, because they want to drive people into the area so they can make more money from their project. It's not a free thing. The interest rate, that's nothing. Truly, it's a reasonable amount, but you're not there. You're not making 4%. You want to make way more than 4%. And so you're trying to drive people into the area So you can start your unit prices of your place at a much higher price. So you have to build the foundation. So you have to do something to enhance the area to offset the negatives, so you can drive more traffic into the area, so you can start your unit price higher. Because you're trying to max out yours per. Now, what you can do is set into it a future purchase option, kind of into the contract, where they approve the building and you'll lower the per unit price, but you participate in the upside equity. So it's like a 90-10 deal. When they buy the unit, they own 90%. Your group still owns 10%. They do this with MetLife. They have a 90% mutual, 10% corporate owned. And so you do a dual entity. When they buy something, it's not 100% theirs. It's 90% theirs, 10% yours. And so the unit price sells initially lower, but you get the equity bump with them. Your 10% grows as their 90% grows. So you're in it together, and if the unit sells, well, you get a higher price, and the new unit goes, and you can cash out of your 10% if you want, and have them offer it to them and offer them a buyout. So you can back out of the project eventually. You can cash out of your 10%. You see it on Shark Tank. I need a perpetuity of $5 for 10 years. After I recapture this amount after 10 years, no more. So we go straight debt financing, and then you're just paying back the loan at 4%. Truly. So you get 90-10, and then eventually you're going to sell your 10% interest. And they eventually get 100%. Because you made your money and now you want to take that 10% and use it somewhere else. And so you say for 10 years, it's a 90-10 split. After 10 years, the 10% will be on there. And if you can afford to buy me out, it doesn't mean every unit's going to buy you out. But the ones that want to, it's offered tenured after 10 years. And they can buy out the other 10%, but they don't have to. They can stay 90-10. Truly, maybe they don't have the money or whatever it may be. They have other reasons they don't want to buy out the 10%, and that's fine. It's not a forced buy, it's just tendered to them, and it stays that way. And if they ever sell, the new owners can buy out 100%. So it's a way to structure it where you're not getting your immediate upside. You're going to get the upside later on as the units appreciate in value. So you have to figure out how you're going to get your money out of the project, because the bank wants to know how the hell you're going to get your money. But you have to stay active in the community, because you can't let the community fall, because then your equity goes down and you get the units going for cheaper and you get depreciation. So you have to stay active in the community with the Streeterville, with the chamber and so on, making sure the community is moving in the right direction. You're making a big play. Those buildings cost hundreds of millions to $1 billion. These are big fucking, excuse the French, big investments. And so you need to make sure that it's going. Like Belly's is doing its new casino and they're advertising in that, but they need to be very active in the city and the direction of the city that the city is going. They have a little investment now, Now they're making a big investment, and they don't want the casino to fail. Truly, they have to have an exit strategy, but it's not good for their gaming that people are going to use Belly to manage their casinos and property and that, because people look at the success of your operations. Like Trump, they rip on him for Taj Mahal, and rightfully so. He's a horrible casino manager. Bally's could take over for Taj Mahal or Rivers. I don't know how good they do at Rivers, but I love the people at Bally's. They did things right with me. And the whole point is, people are measuring you on the success of your projects. And if it goes wrong, so they have to be highly active in the city of Chicago and what's going on with the city of Chicago. They can have gang violence. Do you know they don't have that in Las Vegas? They're very big on making sure there's no cartel activity, no gang violence. That's very bad for business, criminal activity. So, truly, find me. There's one time where a gang came down from California and did a daytime robbery. Basically, they shot and killed every one of them. You can look up the story. But it was a broad daylight shootout. It was a brazen robbery of a casino. And it was an LA gang, some minority gang. I think they're Samoans or something like that. But they literally killed every single one of them. They can't have people coming down, guns a-blazing, trying to rob a casino. So they wanted to send a message. You're sending a message, what you're accepting or not, and people are watching like, oh, they kind of got away with that. I'll bring down my homeboys. They're really soft on crime. Let's get the homeboys coming in and we'll do. They look at the border. What do you think the cartels and all that did? You're soft on the border. You're soft on crime. Look at what we did. Illegals and everything else. So they watch. And if you're the doughboy, you're nice and soft and juicy, well, they're going to keep on taking bites out of you. But you look at places and they're very tough on crime and they don't tolerate it. Criminals don't want to be around because they get whacked. So it's a totally different point of view. So when you're silent in that, like they did in the communities, and let them get away with it, well, then they run you. It's a nice car. But they run you. The safe passage and that, all the citizens are always in like penalty. That's why I was disappointed with Barack Obama. He came down to Chicago because she got shot. And then what did he do? He did a photo op, came down, and then left. He didn't do any anti-violence. He didn't do anything. He didn't do funding from the federal government into Chicago anti-violence movement. He didn't send down Eric Holder and the prosecutors. He didn't retask FBI units, the DEA, the ATF. He didn't do anything. But he did come down to take a picture with the family and everything, to make a speech. And then I waited. He's from Chicago, right? He's going to do something. And then when he became president, before that, I'm waiting. He's going to do stuff for Illinois, right? He's going to do stuff for Chicago, right? Reagan did a lot. He came to Sara Lee. He did a bunch of initiatives in Illinois. And I was watching, well, what is Obama doing with his base? His base is Illinois. And Illinois supported him and got him elected. And I was waiting for the trickle on down because, it's an eye for an eye. You give to get. And so they supported him, and they'll trickle on down. So it's the same thing. Reagan did things for California because they supported him. So it is quid pro quo in that way. It's horse trading, and you give certain things, you receive certain things. It's not illegal stuff. You're doing everything transparent. It's all above the board. But what was the trickle on back? Now, we did get the library, and that's supposed to be some great initiative that's integrating. So let's see how that works out. So, but I want to see how this works out. And then Obama, he didn't want to live here. He wanted to live. Now, Reagan moved to to California, and he went back to California. Obama did not want to live here. He wanted to stay in D.C. He didn't want to come back to Illinois. He didn't want to speak for Illinois. Even I'll give it to Mayor Richard Daley. He set up a thing with the University of Chicago, and he acted as a representative when he left the mayor's office as a promoter or endorser of the University of Chicago. They hired him. Now, he moved to Michigan. He married a black woman. Yes, the former mayor married a black woman and moved to Michigan. Last time I saw him, he was in town at Gibson's, and I was eating lunch. But he married a black woman, and he moved to, first wife was white. Maggie died of cancer. And then his second wife is a black woman. He remarried, he married a black woman. So, again, and he lives up in Michigan. But the whole point is he still promotes for the University of Chicago in that way. So this is Belly's Casino. And now they're making a major investment. And people are going to watch on its performance. And this will affect their operational image. This is their new property. Just like Steve Wynn, when he opened up in Tunica and the property didn't go well. It initially didn't go well. It did go well. He was right. It just took a little bit more time. But the whole point is they did a thing and they actually removed him from the corporation. He was right. But the thing is, the projections were wrong. Steve projected that it would do better faster. In Tunica, Mississippi, I think it is, right on the water. But I was supposed to go down there with Lance. I wanted to check out the property. But again, they kind of removed him temporarily because the projections were off. It took longer to turn out, and it hurt their image, and it hurt their bottom line, and the stock wasn't doing well. And the numbers and the performer on that expected greater return, and he didn't do a great job managing expectations. Truly, in that, he didn't do a good job managing expectations. It was a new gaming thing. Down south, it's supposed to be really nice. I've never been there, to Tunica, Mississippi, but it's supposed to be really nice and everything. The property, the area, it's supposed to be a good, nice place to go gambling down south. It's right on the ocean, but his numbers were off. And so basically he ended up having to take responsibility, and he did, and basically temporarily removed. And then when it came back around, he moved back into position. But the thing is, he didn't manage expectations correctly. So people are going to watch how this casino is doing. And if it's not doing well, then it's going to take a hit on their image to being a national and international gaming management company, Bally's. And so these things do matter. So people look at how you're doing. So you say Howard Ankins and all that, and that's fine, but investors are looking at how much liability do you have, and how much of my money is going to go out in personal injury lawsuits for your occupation. Remember when that platform imploded? They made a lot of changes in the oil industry very fast with platforms. Why? Because all the oil stocks across the board, all the other companies, they took a serious hit. All of them, all the companies, because the oil industry took a hit. Because that's why associations in that's why you have the oil producing association, the petroleum producing, because if a member messes up like that, where you have a platform blowing up and imploding in the ocean, everybody reevaluates their positions, and you become a very risky investment. And people are wondering how many more platforms are dysfunctional and how many more platforms are going to implode. Here's another project right here. Midwest fencing. Yes. I wonder if they did the fencing for Lollapalooza. Surely. A lot of porta potties so the construction workers have a place to go. You don't want them defecating on your property. You want proper hygiene. You don't want your workers getting sick. They're already in construction and there's dust and other things. You don't want them to also have improper hygiene because they can't go to the washroom and that, and they're defecating, incorrectly, and they can't wash their hands and that, and they get sick. That drives up the cost of the project, because insurance companies watch your last project. How much liability claims did you have? Truly, how much liability claims did you have? Because it's risk adjusted. And if your last project had a lot of crimes, well, your next project, they're going to ask you for a lot more money for the liability insurance for the next project. So if you don't think, go back to that something horizon and then go look at it, and that the whole industry took a bath. And people all over were reevaluating, do they want that platform to be open? Do they want to build another one? Should we shut down the platforms? Are more platforms defective? It created a whole movement against oil platforms. And rightfully so. If it didn't, it should have. Because that's what happens when you do something wrong. You need to suffer for your unrighteous acts. And so if you're covering up all the crimes against me, may you burn in eternal damnation. That means all the people that did all these wrongs to me and injustices, they get away with it. And if they get away with it, that's because you're behind them, then you all should go under. You're all in it together like the Three Musketeers, and you all burn together. So here's land right here in the city, and this is coming through the rail yards. But like I said, I don't know what they're doing to dampen the vibrational noise of the tracks. So again, I don't know the future of Chicago for these bridges and everything else. Oh, yeah. Running across these bridges, do they have any dampering? Truly. You hear? So, you want to know what they're doing to back out this stuff. Because if you do have any future tremors, then the things are positioned to absorb the energy, and so they're not really a problem. Even the minor ones don't do anything then. It totally gets absorbed. So I only remember we had one earthquake when I was a kid, and the only reason they knew is because people are in the Sears Tower or the John Hancock building on the top floors where the news used to be, and they're like, wow, the office is really shaking. And they said, and I was watching the news live, and they're like, oh, we're having an earthquake. So that's the only earthquake I know, but I watched it. I was watching TV. I didn't feel anything. But because the people at the highest of the building, well, they didn't have anything to damper. And if you know anything about building design, the people that are on the upper floors, when an earthquake hits, they get it the worst. So, truly, the vibration or sways the building, they get it the worst. So, being closer to the ground, not so. The higher up you are, the worse the effect. It's a compounding effect. It's a compounding effect. So, the whole thing is, when you're choosing these things and doing these projects, okay, they're not doing it. I was for the 150 story. And if done right, it can absorb all the seismic energy. And that building project can be done somewhere else to Spire. It's a beautiful building. It's a beautiful design. Just because it's not done in Chicago doesn't mean it can't be done somewhere else. So just because it isn't right for this market, it could be done in another market and somebody else gets the building. I mean, unless you want to throw in all that money that you spent and just let it go down the tube, or you can just relocate where the building is getting built. And maybe it's only 100 stories instead of 150 stories. So you can right-size the building, but I think it's pretty spectacular design. I was a big proponent or favorite of it. But the whole point is, you have to do the right things in the design and understand the dynamics so you don't end up with all the negativity. So as we redo these bridges and all this, and we do, how are they working to make things sturdier? This is structural integrity of the city. These bridges support the banks of the river. It's not just getting across the river. The bridges itself anchor the banks of the river itself. So the bridges are structural supports of the city, and they support all this landmass. These seawalls or river walls anchor in all these buildings. And if these river walls collapse in an earthquake, you ever heard of a landslide? Well, if the walls of the river collapse, these buildings will go down. So you have Upper and Lower Wacker Drive. So how did they reinforce it so it makes sure that you don't have shifting. So remember the lakeshore right here, the river and all that on East Michigan Avenue and that, on that side, Lakeshore Drive, that's reinforcing the building integrity of those buildings like Lake Point Tower and all that. So how Navy Pier is and how it's anchored and everything affects everything behind it. And if something happens to it, it shifts out. Well, then everything behind it shifts outward. So these are the integrity. And so you want to make sure that you're building things that create stability. So how these things are anchored in does matter. So this whole riverbed and how the soil is packed and everything else and how it's reinforced and everything is critical. It anchors the roadway. It anchors the structures on the other side of the roadway. So when you're upgrading and doing all this, and we're doing this trillion-something dollar, infrastructure project, well, we should be thinking about reinforcing our structures, securing, our stuff, making a brighter future, building real foundations. Truly. And I always thought that was funny. I met a girl who worked for a firm that was called Real Foundations. And the people that started the firm were two guys from Ernst & Young. And they were, from my understanding, very big Christians. And everybody I met from the firm truly was very spiritual. So I thought it was good. The firm was very good to me. So they allowed Jen to get companion tickets, allowed me to stay in Jen's room. I was the first. They started the company. They didn't have anyone dating and asking for their significant other to travel with them or stay in their hotel rooms and that. And I met all upper management and everything, and they had no problem. And so everywhere I went, they picked up the tab. Jen didn't pay, they paid. She didn't pay for any of those flights and the places we went. That wasn't her. Her firm paid. Real Foundations paid. So Jen didn't pay anything out of pocket with that. So make no mistake, the hotel room they paid for, the airline flight to and fro for me, they paid for. And she had a per diem, and she used the per diem, and they paid for the meals. So, again, she didn't really pay for anything of mine. It was part of her perk working for the company. But how did I get them to do it? I benchmarked it. I had Jen talk to Rob Betts, who worked for General Electric as a consultant, and how they run their things with their significant others. And then I told her from Deutsche Bundesbank, who I was going to work for as a consultant, yes, the German central bank, they wanted to hire me as one of their economic consultants. And basically when I was at the Courtyard for Marriott working there. But anyways, they told me that I had these tickets. I can go back and forth anywhere I wanted on weekends, and I could bring a significant other with me. So basically I told Jen that's how it worked, and I said, let me talk to Rob Betts and see how GE does it. And she said, and we talked to GE, Rob, who was working for General Electric, and he said, yeah, that's how we work it. That's part of General Electric's. It's a perk for being a consultant for them. So if you want your significant other to travel with you, they have no problem with it. They're paying for a hotel room anyways, whether it's you by yourself or you with somebody else. There is single bed. So basically, and you're sleeping with them and so on, and they give you so much per diem. So if you want to share the per diem with them, again, they have no problem, and they pay for the companion fare. The flight, so the companion can fly with you. So that was my goal. If I stayed with Jen, you don't understand. I would have been traveling with her every week. When she left on Monday morning, I would leave with her. And when she came back on Thursday night, I would come back with her. I would be with her 7 days a week. So that's what, in my business, I could travel. And so where she went, I would go. And I would be working out of the hotel room, and she would be working on her locations, and then we would meet up in the evenings. That's what we did when I stayed in Los Angeles. And I went and saw the Maybach. They had the introduction for the Maybach, which never rolled out for Mercedes, really. But it was a nice car. I saw it. It was there where I was staying. And I worked out of the hotel room. I can make I had my cell phone call and my computer, and I made all my prospecting calls for group health and other things, and I did all my stuff, and I worked my whole day. And then she was working later after 5 or so, and I wanted to go and check out some things, so I walked, and they had the Maybach display, and I checked out the Mercedes and did some other things. I got back to the hotel, and she got back around 6 or 7-ish. And then we went out to eat. But I stayed with her just like when she worked for Wawa. She was in Philadelphia. I flew out to Philadelphia, and then I stayed with her through the week. I came in on Monday, and on Thursday night, we stayed in Philadelphia. And then she worked there on Friday. We didn't leave, so she worked remotely on Friday. And then Saturday, we went up into Connecticut and stayed at an Airbnb. Not an Airbnb, but a bed and breakfast. And we did Saturday and Sunday at a bed and breakfast in Connecticut with this couple. It was really nice, beautiful, and came downstairs, and they had, breakfast and all that stuff for us. And it was really nice. Connecticut, if you've ever seen Christmas in Connecticut, they have really nice bed and breakfasts. Going to Connecticut for Christmas and staying at a bed and breakfast is very nice. And so we had, a very good experience at the bed and breakfast. And so going up there for the holidays and that, it's kind of really cool. Take your family up there. You don't have to stay at the same bed and breakfast. Do you know that? You can do the Airbnb experiences, and the Airbnb experiences can have bed and breakfasts. Bed and breakfasts are experience. They cook you the food. They have the whole setup. You can have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Truly. And they cook it, and basically, you stay in a room in the house, and it's really kind of cool, and it can be part of the Airbnb experiences. So, again, what this city does has a trickle-on effect. So we see with these new projects coming in, like with these builders, their reputation's on the line, and if that project isn't successful, well, it kind of taints their image, because they're looking at their win-loss ratio. Truly, because you get more losses, and the banks want more money down deposit, and they want a higher rate of interest, because you prove that you're not really successful. And so they're going to demand more deposits, more pre-sale, and a higher rate of interest. Because you're just that much more risk. So the city here, like the Chicago Police Department, why would I buy anything from the Chicago Police Department? They've proven to be a failure. Now, the thing is, I do agree with them. The guns, Gary, long before Chicago became the murder capital, Gary was the murder capital. And lots of guns came in from Gary into the city of Chicago. Lots of guns came in from Indiana into the city of Chicago. So make no mistake about that. And so Gary and its gangs, and it was a black community, that black community influenced this black community, not the other way around. And so that bad area, those people had a lot of operation because very close to the city of Chicago. So again, lots of things can come over very easily. So again, they say they're redoing Gary, and that's very good for the city of Chicago, because if Gary doesn't get its stuff, it's very risky, because they sit on your outskirts, and if they're not having their stuff together, well, then it's very easy for it to pour over into your neighborhood. So yeah, the big balls drop. Now, Rahm Emanuel changed the name of Chicago. And those are cool, the cocktail balls. But they can do like soda punches and that for kids, non-alcoholic cocktail balls. They can have an alcoholic and non-alcoholic versions. Natural hedge. But Rahm Emanuel was doing the Stars Rising, changing Windy City. In New York, they dropped the Big Apple. Well, Chicago is the rising star, the city of the rising star, not the house of the rising sun, the city of the rising star. That's all Chicago. And I agreed with Rahm changing it from the Windy City, because the Windy City was all about the politicians who were corrupt, lies, cheating, stealing, embezzling, and with the mafia and criminal organizations. That's the wind, the hot air, the basically very negative. But now we can be the city of the rising star. So, yeah, we can be the Star of David. I mean, the Star of David's a Christian thing as well as a Jewish thing. It's in the Bible. It's the Old Testament. It's part of the Christian Bible. So the thing is, there's a lot of crossover between Judaism and Christianity. That's how it is. That's where Jesus came from. And Jesus started Christianity with the disciples. And basically, so we can be, the star is a rising. So we're the house of the rising star. So Chicago is a rising star, the house of the rising star. So I don't get it. We used to have Montgomery Wards. We had, I think, Goldblatt's, Montgomery Ward, Sears, an incredible amount. We had Sara Lee, Sara Lee was the biggest bakery in the world. I mean, Chicago was an incredible juggernaut. We had the largest candy. We had Mars and many others, Mars and Wrigley and Fiero Candy and many others. So Chicago used to be a juggernaut. I mean, a real rising, mighty power. But no more. Why doesn't Vanguard open up a building in Chicago? Truly. They don't have anything in the Midwest. They have Valley Forge, which is in Pennsylvania. They have Charlotte, North Carolina. And they have, for the West Coast, they have the South, Charlotte, North Carolina. They have the East, in Valley Forge, or Valley, anyways, in Pennsylvania, and they have Scottsdale for the West Coast, but they don't have a Midwest. And they can open up here in the Midwest. So could BlackRock. Both of them can open up here in the Midwest. And I'm talking about putting a substantial office here in Central America. And so it would be strategically smart for them. It's the one thing they don't have right now. And talking about Vanguard, I don't know where BlackRock's offices are, but both of them can open up in Chicago and make big plays into Chicago. So I don't understand why they wouldn't come here, because there's Aon with the largest insurance, and then we have Aon, Horton, and we have Gallagher, and these are the largest insurance brokerages. And you know, Vanguard offers and manages annuities. Do you know that? They have their in-house annuities, but they can manage annuities for other companies. Fixed annuities, index annuities, and then variable annuities. They're with Transamerica, and Vanguard has lots of investments in Transamerica's variable annuities. So again, I don't know who BlackRock's with, but again, these insurance brokerages can use them in their life and annuity products, from their fixed to their index products to their variable products. And so they can open up in Chicago, and BlackRock and Vanguard can make a incredible investment here and reach out through the massive insurance markets. And what? They can be all over the options exchanges. BlackRock and Vanguard can be all over the options with Calamos and with American Funds, which I love. American Funds is in Indiana. And you know, American Funds doesn't do any advertising in Chicago. Truly. So they can get in. There's room for them, and there's room for others. But I don't understand why BlackRock and Vanguard wouldn't have a significant play here in Chicago. And with this, you know, all the options and futures and that, you know, you can make a futures into an annuity product, right? How do you do it? You hedge the downside, and then you have the upside. You buy pure futures, not options on futures, but futures. And then you have to hedge the downside on the future, and you can buy the option on the future, the put. So you buy puts, you're long the call, which is the future, or you can short the future if you want, and that can go into an insurance product. So you can make some insurance products that don't exist, that use the futures market and build out the futures market in Chicago. Now, options on futures helps build out the futures market, but also building out the futures market and having them as an investment products. So truly, where you would be investing in futures. And so whether this is, you know, interest rate futures,